he really went into the Brentford trials really not expecting anything to happen. And when they actually said they were going to take him on as an apprentice, and Chris just sat there, didn't say anything. So I sort of tapped him on his leg and I said, absolutely fantastic, isn't it? And he sort of looked at me, and I think in his head, he was expecting to be rejected. So he had that whole scenario in his head that he didn't actually listen to what they were saying. So we had to sort of recap and, and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're offering you. And then he believed it.
Welcome to this episode of Behind the Boots, where we have the unique experience of exploring the youth football journey from the parents' perspective.
Today, we have the privilege of having Sue and Jim Mepham. Hello, welcome.
How are you doing?
Good.
Lovely.
Sue and Jim are parents of 3 children, including Chris Mepham, who is a professional football player at Bournemouth, and he's also a Welsh international player.
We're going to be really excited to delve into your journey, Sue and Jim. It really is, it's quite rare for us to be able to have this opportunity to speak to parents. You've been on the sidelines, and the level of conversation can differ depending on which cohort of parents that you get. So this is really going to be interesting for other parents who are going to be, and carers who are on the journey as well, to hear your experiences. What I would like to start with, though, is if you could actually just sum up in a sentence the journey. How has it been? What would be your
No pressure.
I'd say it's a really roller coaster ride all the way through from start to finish. Well, it's not finished yet, but lots of highs, lots of lows, lots of support, lot of disappointment. And it is literally a roller coaster, highs, lows, highs, lows.
Wow.
And you probably experience that yourselves, because a lot of people are all the same. They experience the same sort of thing.
But the highs are definitely worth it.
Oh, wonderful. Well, can we do that first? Let's celebrate the highs. Just, what's been like one or two of the highlights of this journey for you guys as parents?
I think probably from Chris's early career to be picked up by Brentford, as he was quite sort of late on at the age of 17, having a wonderful time there. Then obviously, Premier League with Bournemouth, which is where he's at the moment. And then because of Jim's mom being able to qualify to play for Wales internationally. And then obviously the pinnacle for us in November was watching him in the starting 11 for the Wales games out in Qatar, which the whole family attended.
Oh, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Yeah.
No.
And how do you guys feel watching that? I mean, going to those huge stadiums in Qatar, it's a World Cup, you're sitting in the crowd. Do you feel really nervous, or do you feel excited, or is it again the roller coaster?
I feel excited. Sue is really, really nervous and can't even look sometimes.
I'll be like that.
Go outside sometimes, but I take it pretty much with a pinch of salt. I can,
I think the thing as well is that for Chris, he was just so calm all the time he was out there and on the pitch. And I think it was only after, they didn't go through to the next group stages that he actually really appreciated that he played football on the world stage. I think he was meeting up with the squad and their personal friends. They've got a job to do, and it's just their default to play football. And I think it was only afterwards that he actually realised what a tremendous honour. He knew obviously at the time, but I think on reflection, it had more gravitas afterwards.
Understood, absolutely. I mean, it's there are millions and millions of young boys and girls around the world that are dreaming of playing football professionally. Was that always a dream for Chris, or was it something that he just, fell into football because everyone else was doing it? What was the starting point for?
Starting point was we're a football family, like we're all made on football. Well, my wife.
Not so much me.
Not so much so. But my brother was actually at Brentford 2 years, top goal scorer in their youth side.
Wow.
And just didn't quite make it to professional. Mm-hmm. So it's ironic that Chris come along, joined Brentford, and then became a professional at Brentford. So that was a journey. But even signing as a professional at Brentford still had lots of downs. Rejected by Chelsea, rejected by Watford, rejected by QPR. Our family, who we support as a family, Chris, myself.
And our older son as well.
And our older son, yeah, Jonathan. And, he got rejected by 3 of them. So he was down, but then Brentford came along and Sue urged him in the end to.
Yeah, I think Chelsea experience was amazing. He was only a little boy. I think he was about 11 or 12 when, his journey at the Chelsea Academy. And we did think that he was going to go then to another football team. And after a couple of unsuccessful trials, he was ready to give up, a bit dejected. What's the point? What's the point? And then he was asked to go along to the Brentford Development Centre. And it was, what is the point? And I just sort of did a bit of a mum pep talk and said, we believe in you. You've got to believe in yourself. And if you never take this opportunity, you'll never know what might happen. And as luck would happen, it's all just sort of clicked into place. But he was really doubting himself. He'd lost his self-belief. He'd lost the thought that he could ever have a career in football. But he was that little bit younger. He was only a teenager. So whilst it was disappointing and hard to accept, he was at a different stage and was a bit more willing to sort of be influenced by mom and dad and to sort of give it a go. But he really went into the Brentford trials really not expecting anything to happen. And when they actually said they were going to take him on as an apprentice, ironically, Jim always takes him, and I'd taken him that day. And they said, right, we'd like you to become an apprentice. And Chris just sat there, didn't say anything. So I sort of tapped him on his leg and I said, absolutely fantastic, isn't it? And he sort of looked at me. And I think in his head, he was expecting to be rejected. So he had that whole scenario in his head that he didn't actually listen to what they were saying. So we had to sort of recap and, and say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're offering you. And then he believed it.
How was that for you guys? You've seen him have a certain amount of success in youth football and then he sort of lost confidence. How was that for you guys? Did he stay in grassroots? What was, was he still going to matches?
Yeah, he was still going to football matches and he was advised to play for a really good, Sunday soccer side, in which he did. That's where he got picked up by Brentford. But he always enjoyed football, so he never, ever entertained giving it up completely. He loved the game.
And John, our older son, he played football as well locally. So the 2 boys, quite competitive out in our garden, the football being bashed against the garage doors. And they were both battling for the balls. Chris learnt a lot of skills via John, our older son, as well. Quite young on,
I've noticed that I've got 2 boys that play, and one's 17 and one's 9 now. But, my 9-year-olds sort of playing with all the 16-year-olds. They get quite tough. In some of the 9-year-old games, I'm like, call it.
Exactly that, yeah. Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Tell us about the support over the years that you've given to Chris and how that's fitted in with the wider family, with your other children.
Yeah, it was really hard work. For example, I was doing 2 jobs at the time, postman and a black cab driver.
And I was working.
And Sue's a school teacher.
So I was head of department 4 days a week, managing a department. So we had to juggle it between us. So Chelsea was 4 days a week commitment. So
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, so Tuesday, Thursday I took, and Saturday, Sunday you took, or we'd. But, we had in the old days, you had one of those sort of family calendars, and we actually had to have everything sort of logistically worked out, who was doing what. If I had a parents' evening, Jim would have to slot in. But we also have 2 other children, John and Lizzie. They had interests and places they needed to be. So when one of us wasn't doing what we were doing with Chris and the football, the other one was doing dinner, ferrying them to whatever activities they were doing, and checking homework and all the usual things that you do as a parent.
And how tough was that for you?
Very, very tough, I think, because when I was picking him up from school at 3:30, when he was 8 years old, coming home, giving them a bit of early dinner, then an hour's journey to Cobham, Chelsea's ground, and then to be there at 6, then a 2-hour training session, then getting him home at 9, so a quick shower for him, and then a quick flight for me. Then I was in bed straight away because I was up at 5 o'clock the following morning. Right. And that was twice a week, Tuesday and Thursdays.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard work.
Yeah. And what I was doing was I was dropping him off, but then I wasn't able to watch him train. I was literally dashing to the supermarket, doing a family food shop, then going to the parents' lounge, marking work, and just generally trying to do anything else while Chris was training to try and keep on top of the family, make sure everybody's needs were provided for. But Jim and I were a bit like ships that passed in the night. Most conversations were very practical ones of who was doing what, when, and with which child or with which children. And we're married and we're joint parenting, but as a single parent, I don't know whether I would have been able to sustain it, to be absolutely honest, either of us.
No.
4 days a week.
Were you prepared? Did you know what was ahead when Chris first got to Chelsea? Did you have any idea what it would?
Not really. They were very good, Chelsea, in all fairness to them. They outlined what the future would probably be, saying that not many of you will make it finally as a professional. But we're giving you a wonderful experience and chance to express yourself, and very few of you will actually make it as a professional footballer. So they told us that in no uncertain terms, and not to get the boys' hopes up. No, even though they're at an academy level, that in all probability not many of them make it to be a professional, and they did stress that time and time again.
And Chris was very little as well. He was quite young, so that sort of bit didn't really, I don't think, really impacted. It was just, I'm doing what I love. I'm at Chelsea. Chelsea's a big name, and he's developing his skills, and that's part of his journey and what's made him the footballer he is today.
And how did your older one, did he play football too?
Yeah, they played for the same Sunday side. Okay. John's 4 years older, so Chris was playing under 7s, and his brother John was playing under 11s. And even then, we had to. I wanted to go and see John play, but I had to be with Chris as a 7-year-old because he's the youngest, and so John got neglected sometimes because we both couldn't go, and it was things like that really. You really had to jiggle it about to see both of them play.
One of the things that Jim did was, because he seemed to be doing so much with the boys and football, because at one point you were refereeing, weren't you? Yeah. Sometimes, and things like that. That we'd do a special trip into London with our daughter and sort of have a daddy and daughter day, which usually involved a bit of retail therapy, a nice lunch, to actually sort of, acknowledge the fact that they were part of our family, they are part of this journey, but, the guilt, I think, that comes with sometimes doing the right thing for one. And as a mom, you know how it is, guilt's written probably across most of our foreheads. And I felt, and especially at work as well, I didn't always feel I was giving 100% to work. You sometimes worrying you aren't giving 100% to each of your children, trying to be a perfect parent. And of course, there's no such thing. Just doing our best, really.
Best, yeah. Yeah.
No, the guilt, I think that's, it's talked about a lot more now, isn't it? But there's this feeling, especially when you're working and you're trying to juggle different children and different things, and you feel like you end up feeling like you're not doing anything right. But no, I have exactly the same. With, you know, I'm up the North Circular and I'm kind of dropping one to one match, bombing it over to the other match, getting
Exactly.
it's a
That's
complete
exactly what it's
juggling
like.
act.
And there
I
is
think
a
it's
cost
part-
involved as well. Chelsea weren't paying for our petrol or anything like that. They were
Right.
feeding Chris. There was coffee and tea in the lounge. Sometimes I wasn't getting anything unless I went out, and Cobham itself was closed at sort of 5:30. So obviously wasn't going to go to the pub or anything like that. So quite often, you know, Jim and I eating at silly o'clock once we've come home and sorted Chris out, seeing where the other two are at, what needs to be done. Yeah, so possibly not the healthiest lifestyle either. And M25, 30 minutes to Cobham on a good day, an accident, volume of traffic, you know, the home journey sometimes was taking us a lot of time.
Yeah. Sue, I can understand that. I did in the early days to Cobham from North London, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 2.5.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes not at all and turn back.
Yeah.
So I feel your pain. I feel your pain. You touched on your other children there, just sort of reflecting back with them. How have they ever reflected back on the journey and sort of articulated how it was for them? I know how you've sort of expressed how it was as parents, but
I think it's
how
very
have they seen
difficult.
it?
You know, they're very proud of Chris. You know, they're unbelievably, immensely proud of Chris. And obviously, probably most of any dissatisfaction probably was expressed at the time. Some of it may not have been expressed, but we haven't. You know, we don't feel there's been any issues. But it's very, very difficult, I think. And, you know, our other two children are highly successful in their own fields as well. The older son's gone into banking, and our daughter is a head of department at a local comprehensive school. So she's followed me into teaching slightly different subjects. So I think and they had a very good social life, the two of them, good friends, a lot of communication with other parents, you know, car sharing. We even got to the stage where we were able to share Cobham at least once or twice a week. Later on, once we got to know the other parents, that, you know, the goalkeeper was going at the same time, and the same, obviously relying, Jim's parents weren't around. Mine were living up in the northeast, so they're relying very much on friends to ferry the children to and from the other activities, a bit of help with Chris. So we're immensely grateful to our friends and that sort of network, but we had to sort of do that ourselves. You know, that was just chatting on the sidelines, calling in favours from friends locally.
Quite important, isn't it? And not always easy for some people to do. Like when you're quite sociable and you don't mind sort of making conversation and building those networks. And for some people that could be quite tricky if you know, if you're not as sociable. But I could definitely see how that support network is so important, isn't it? In that environment.
Yeah, you have to have it, I think.
Yeah.
We couldn't have done it without.
No.
We just wouldn't have been able to do it without the backup that we had.
And we're seeing more and more, like it takes a village to raise a young football player to get them, you know, to where they are. It's you need a lot of support. You need to, and I think as well, a part of the reason we started this was to celebrate the parent role, because you often hear the stories from the players or even from the manager's perspective of how things went, but you very rarely hear the stories and, you know, what parents have with people too. A lot of your life is put to the side to support this journey, which is fine, and you know you want to do it, but it can also raise challenges, right?
I think as well, Chris's journey has been a very successful one, but that is, as you said at the start, quite unusual. We were doing this regardless. It was what he wanted to do, being given this amazing opportunity, and we wanted to encourage him and do everything we could to make it happen, in the same way as our other children had activities that they pursued and maybe later on, you know, changed their mind about. But Chris never fails to thank us, to refer to us, to mention, because as an adult he looks back, and because it wasn't plain sailing from Chelsea to where he is now, and there was a couple of lows, he's very, very grateful that he's where he is, and he looks back and he knows that we helped.
Yeah, he does appreciate it a lot.
Yeah,
he tells us, regularly.
and tells everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, good old. We
Yeah.
love Chris.
No.
We love Chris. Appreciates his family. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment though that you felt, gosh, this is actually really difficult? We're struggling.
For him?
No,
For
for
us?
you as a family.
I think I probably struggled a little bit with my mental health. I have to confess, while in younger years, I think having 3 children, managing a team at the secondary school, teaching GCSE, A-level languages, which is my subject, the workload is quite immense. The commitment is quite immense. And I always strived for perfection. I wanted to be the perfect head of department, the perfect teacher, the perfect wife, perfect housewife, perfect mom. And I strived for that. And I put myself under completely unrealistic pressure. And it's only now that I just think, actually, I didn't need to be perfect. What we did our best. And that's what Jim and I always say. We absolutely did our best. But I think Jim was much more calmer than me and much more realistic. I am very, very emotional and a bit sensitive. And I think I found that the pressure, the juggling of it all, did affect me, if I'm really honest.
Did you feel that the actual playing of the game, because a lot of parents really struggle with that, on the sidelines watching how they're performing, or in matches thinking, are they going to get, did you feel affected by any of that sort of stuff within the football space?
I'm terrible watching the games. Last 10 minutes of any game, I just want to leave the ground. If they're winning, I don't want anything to happen. And I think it's a shame, because it stops me enjoying the game as much as I do. But I think as a parent, I think you can't help that. And that if they're successful, you just know that your child's going to be happy and sort of upbeat. But, if it's a crucial game and the result doesn't go their way, that they're going to be a little bit crushed, a little bit broken, and you're going to pick up the pieces. And obviously you want to be doing the former and not the latter. But football isn't like that. You don't win every game.
Oh, no.
Susan, just sort of going back to what you were saying about your well-being being impacted, were you able to sort of express that to anyone, whether it was Jim or the family or other family members, or is it something that, because you've just got to get on and do, that you just work through it? Because
me personally, I think you just got to get on and do it. He had to be there, or didn't have to be, but he wanted to be. So we got him there regardless, and he had to be there, and we wanted him to go through what you may call sort of.
But from my particular point of view, I'm someone that does need to sort of communicate. So I've got a couple of really, really good friends, because, as I say, family, we're a long way away, and known them pretty much. One of them in particular I've known since I first started my first teaching job, and would talk to friends, and they were friends that weren't going through the same journey as we were necessarily going through, but would listen, would advise, would champion me and say, you're doing a good job, you're doing your best, everything's going to be fine, stop being so hard on yourself and be kind to yourself. And at the time, you don't think you're listening to those messages, but obviously I was. And yes, and as I say, I think sometimes you can get so bogged down in the practicalities of the footballer's journey that I was too tired sometimes to actually overreact to things. But obviously, as I say, my friends' network just carried me, and Jim and I, we always communicated, but quite often it was sort of late at night after the children had gone to bed, and before Jim and I were going to bed ourselves to get up the next day and do it all again.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us a bit about, so I'm interested in that education bit as well, from sort of you know, even early years when he's sort of training with Chelsea, right? Was he 12? Did you say?
He got picked up by Chelsea at 7, signed for the academy at 9, and released at 13, 14.
13. And how did you find like balancing the kind of education? I know, Sue, because of your background, you were in a good position with that. How did you find that?
I think, well, my children went to the school I taught in, which at the time was a little bit of a disadvantage. The one message that we said to all of our children was that you need to have a good clutch of GCSEs to go out into the world, whatever you do. And one of the messages to Chris was always, we absolutely want this football journey to be successful for you, but if it isn't, you need to have a good set of GCSEs so that, you know, if the football journey ends, then you're playing football for pleasure, but there is a plan B. And quite often there could be a little bit of a struggle. Some days playing a game, coming back from the game, saying, right, got to do your homework. Not always number one priority, but yeah, we powered on
You're laughing
through.
at that.
Yeah, literally there are GCSEs going on right now.
And he's got a good set of GCSEs, and he's, you know, he's an amazing young man. But as I say, I think he always said we sort of kept his feet firmly on the ground, and I think we're both quite practical people, aren't we?
Yeah.
Wow.
Much so.
And so when he went to Brentford at 17, was he at college? Was he studying still?
He was studying at school, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was finishing his GCSEs, and we were actually looking at, he has to stay in education until he's 18, at what other things he was going to do. So you did a lot of the going off to colleges with him.
It was nothing really that took his fancy.
Nothing.
Really. My brother was a gardener, and he was thinking of joining my brother in the gardening business. He really went out with him, worked a few times with him, quite enjoyed it. And then obviously Brentford come along, they offered him the apprenticeship, and he snapped it up, obviously.
And the apprenticeship involved a day release as well, so he actually sort of got other qualifications as well, sort of coaching levels and things, didn't he? Yeah. So, you know, they made sure as part of the apprenticeship that he was gaining some other qualifications, but he was very lucky because he already had 8 or 9 GCSEs with really good grades. So he was able to do the extra bits.
Amazing. And in terms of that sort of, is that now a different type of support? So now he's at the scholarship, for example, at that period, in the scholarship. Was there a different type of support that you were then needing to give to him versus what you were giving him in the earlier years? Now that he's a young man out into the world of...
Yeah, I think he's a young man then, and he's maturing. So his focus was on trying to be the best he can at what he was doing in football. And he worked ever so hard. He wasn't drinking. He was trying to eat the right food, which was hard sometimes. You know what it's like with burgers and chips.
Yep.
But yeah, he was really sort of dedicated to becoming a professional. And
he wasn't paid very much as an apprentice, so he did have to manage his money as well. And I do recall sort of we decided that he was going to pay a nominal amount of rent, and him being quite incensed, but we just said, you have to understand, nothing comes for free. You have to work hard. And it was just a nominal sum just to make the point. But at the time, you know, you can imagine, Mum, I'm only getting this amount. But we just always felt that, I suppose we probably didn't truly believe ultimately, because the stats are so heavily weighed against him being successful in his football journey. You know, we are reminded of that. Chelsea were, you know, reminded us. The 2 trials he was rejected for reminded us. So we really wanted to keep him grounded, but whilst sort of really building up his self-esteem and making sure that he knew that we absolutely totally % had his back, believed in him, and, you know, always will, and that he's very, very much loved wherever the football journey or whenever the football journey would end. And I just think that's important for him to hear that while he's doing well, but also when maybe they've lost a game or the training isn't going as well as he'd like, you know, just to constantly hear positive affirmations of, we believe in you. I think if we had £1 for every time we said, we believe in you.
Beautiful.
Oh, I love that. You know, I'm on the sidelines of Grassroots, and there's quite a lot of sort of reprimanding and coaching from the sides. Were you guys like that on the sidelines?
It was drummed into us really from Chelsea, but there was no coaching from the side. It wouldn't be tolerated. A couple of parents tried it, but I mean, I was quite good. I mean, I just kept quiet, and you can see when you go back to grassroots football, like, you know, soccer sevens and that, the parents are really, really bad, coaching their kids, telling them what to do. You might as well not have a manager, because the parents sort of take, you know, they try to run the team. It's really bad, but when it gets to academy level, it does
sort that out, don't they, Jim?
So was there any getting in the car afterwards, going through sort of tactical?
No, that's one thing I've never done with him, because the coaches done their bit with him. Obviously, I thought he could have done better in some things, or he'd done really well in something, but I kept always told him he had good games, but never told him about any really negative points in the game.
Really healthy. That's
nice.
I'm curious. See, Kat's really, yeah, I know you like that, Kat. That you.
Well, I just think sometimes we need to hear that, right? They get in the car and you're kind of rewinding the whole match, and when you did that.
Yeah, no,
you know.
never done that. Never done that at all with him. Never ever done that.
No, you can still get to the top without that.
Always try to pick out the positives in the game where you've done well.
And I think in our relationship as well, that because Jim has followed football and has played football and knows football, I don't. He'll talk stats and statistics and results and everything with Jim. He knows it goes completely over my head. So the journey back would probably be me saying, right, when you get home, you need to do this, this and this. Yeah. I know you need to, and sort of, you know, just very, very much the practical, and also the one that, you know, quite emotional. I think possibly because of just the way I am with myself, trying to sort of keep in touch with him emotionally, just checking in on his emotional well-being and picking him up if he's feeling a bit low, and absolutely shouting from the rooftops when everything's going absolutely fantastically well. And as I say, Jim and I, Qatar, that opening game, Wales national anthem, Jim's background, the Welsh background, we were both crying. I mean, it was.
Oh, wasn't it?
In actual fact, the kids were going.
Front men don't cry.
They're going, Mum, why are you crying? They kept asking me at various stages of the game why I was crying. It was. I'm just so emotional, and it's
I feel like crying now.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you, Susan. I'm so emotional too, and that's a nice balance to have, and it's nice for our kids to actually see that, right? That that we support them and love them, and in every way, shape, or form we want to be there for them. Can I also ask you around the characteristics of what you think Chris has that has allowed him to reach the stage that he is in the professional game? And we can see for certain that the family support has been so crucial, number one. What else do you think it has taken him to reach where he is today?
I think he was very hungry. I think he was very hungry for the football. It's an absolute inherent passion, and very competitive. I mean, both boys very competitive, which has got them to where they are now. But I think he had a real hunger, and then that was why it was hard when Chelsea released him, that he didn't go straight from there into another club. He had to sort of have a couple of setbacks, and he was losing faith in himself. And I think it's this determination. And then I think once Brentford picked him up and all the opportunities that came there and thereafter, I do think he has a real determination, but he has had to become emotionally resilient. He wasn't emotionally resilient when he was younger. That is a skill he's had to. And from a footballing point of view,
Yeah, I'll go along with that. The hunger in him, really. He just wanted to succeed. He wanted to become a footballer. He really, and he give it his all. And, he didn't drink or, as I said before, he ate properly. And he didn't drink. And just want to become a footballer, really. It's that dedication to become a footballer, plus the natural skill he needs to be, become that.
And do you think was it all in his hands, or obviously there's an opportunity?
No, not all in his hands. You've got to be at the right place at the right time.
Right.
Play well at the right time, and that was exactly what happened. How he got scouted in the first place. He had the game of his life in this particular game, and the Brentford scout was there, Sean O'Connor, and he just picked him up, and it went on from there, really.
But it was chance he was even playing that afternoon. One of the team had overtime and said he couldn't play, so they then approached Chris and asked him to step up, and that was the game that Sean saw that started it all.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, an element of chance, definitely.
Right place, right time, and putting in a good performance.
We just hear that more and more, don't we, Marcia? Like these sort of stories of like you think something sort of quite bad happened, and then actually something really good comes from it. So it, like you're saying, it's a roller coaster of kind of just got to keep
even when his first game for Brentford, even when he was playing for the under-16s, he only played once. Brentford under-16s. First game. The following week, the under-18 centre half went ill on the day, and the under-18 coach seen Chris in training, liked him, and they pushed him up from the under-16s to the 18s. And he's only played once for the under-16s, so he was straight pushed into the under-18s, and there he stayed for a month. But it was impressive then at that early age.
Right. So they've just got to keep, youngsters, parents listening to this. Just a matter of keep going, right? Don't think that you're not being looked at or watched. It's
always someone somewhere. And never give up, because you don't know who's there, who's looking. And even at today's level, there's always coaches, scouts, games, looking at things.
And my experience is that people who love football talk football all the time. So if somebody's, the people talk to each other and they say, oh, I saw a really useful lad on the pitch, whatever, it might be worth taking a look. I do think there is a lot of just, see what you think. And it's also a person's personal judgment, isn't it, of the player they see on the pitch. Do their skills match what they're looking for? Does it match the team? The philosophy of the team.
Yeah.
And tell us for a minute about the international call-up. I love this. I love hearing about this. How did that happen?
We were on holiday in Spain, and we were having a nice coffee and enjoying the sunshine, and we get a phone call from Chris's agent saying, "Is Chris really Welsh?" I said, "Well, yes, Chris isn't Welsh," but he said, "Well, what's the Welsh connection?" I said, "Well, it's my mum. My mum was Welsh. So have you got documents?" But I said, "What's all this about? What are you asking?" He said, Wales have been in touch, and they've seen Chris, and they believe that he's got Welsh parentage, and they're interested in taking him on. So we had to go out and dig out all my mum's birth certificates.
Fact check.
Send them off to the welfare pay. And then he got... it was funny. He was going on holiday with a couple of Brentford lads. The season ended, and it was a Saturday morning. He was flying out Sunday morning, and he got a phone call from his agent saying he's been called up to a Toulon tournament following day. They were meeting in Heathrow at Saturday night to fly out to Toulon for that big tournament. And so he had to knock his holiday on the head.
Oh,
Fair
wow.
sacrifice.
Join up with the Welsh under-18s.
Thank goodness he didn't get on that plane and have a hangover the next day and then have to go.
Yeah, funny.
Saved by the bell. That's amazing. One thing I'd like to also talk about, as you mentioned there about that Chris has an agent. How did you, prior to that, how did you navigate the business side of football? What did you know about the business?
Another funny story.
All is, Jim.
No, Chris was advised that he needed to get an agent, and I thought, oh Christ, well, how do we go about this? I haven't got a clue. Then we realised that a neighbour across the road, her brother was a football agent. So we knocked on the door. Excuse me, we believe that your brother's football agent. Could I have his phone number? Just brother-in-law, yeah. Could we phone him up just to get some advice? So we spoke to him, and he said, "Well, tell me where he's playing next, and we'll come down and have a look." So they came down the following week, saw him play. Then he phoned me up and said, "How about meeting up in Ealing, West London, and we'll discuss terms we'd like to take him on."
We also had a couple of sort of interviews with other names we were given, but ultimately Chris was central to the decision. So we had a chat first, and then ultimately it was Chris's decision, and he very, very much was in favour. And he's still got the same agent now.
Still same agent.
And I think the thing is, not just interested in the football and the business side of things, but very, very much caring, planning for Chris's financial future. Emotionally supporting him as well. Chris would ring us sometimes when things were a bit frustrating, but also his agent was there with good advice. So we absolutely fell on our feet with the agent. But again, it's just, geographically where our house happened to be in Ealing, that somebody's brother-in-law is a football agent. No, we wouldn't have known where to start otherwise.
No, again, that's really useful, because it's one of those minefield topics that parents have to navigate and often don't know where to start. Not that everyone's got a neighbour next door.
We didn't have a clue, a clue where to start on that, apart from asking other parents, and everyone was in the same boat really, because no one's that sure, are we?
We didn't even think that Chris at that age even needed an agent. I always thought that agents were for top professional footballers much later in their careers. When they actually said at the age he needs an agent, we sort of looked at each other and said, "Does he?" And it was like, yeah, he does. And then Chris was talking to other people in the team, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, I've got an agent." So we suddenly realised we needed to get our finger out and make some inquiries.
Good, and it's inspiring to know that they're still together as a team.
Yes,
after all these years.
Yes, that's really encouraging.
So tell us a bit about then. So he's at Brentford. How does he get then does he go from Brentford to Bournemouth? How is that?
He did. Yeah. We were down watching, there was rumours going around that Bournemouth were looking at Chris. We were at a Brentford game, and sure enough, about 6 rows in front, there was Eddie Howe with
good old Eddie,
number 2, Jason Tindall. And they watched him. 2 weeks after that, they were down again watching him. Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall, and soon after that they put in a bid for Chris in the transfer window.
At Brentford said no.
Brentford said no. If they did, they want £20 million. So it was silly money. So Bournemouth reviewed it, and sure enough, they come back the following season with a offer, and which Brentford accepted. So
rest is history.
Yeah. But it's interesting. We went to the day he sort of practically signed for Brentford. Sue and I and the agent were up in Aston Villa because Aston Villa were interested in signing him. So we had to go to Aston Villa
First.
in the morning, meet the manager, and then meet the manager, then travel down to Bournemouth from Villa Park.
That's a trek.
Yeah.
But it's a really funny story because obviously we're together. So it's Chris wanted us there, his agent there. And we said, and it's like, what do you think, Mum and Dad? And we were like, no, Chris, this is your decision. But Jim that morning had written on a piece of paper and put in his jeans back pocket which club he thought Chris should sign for. So we go and see both clubs, and the manager said to me, what do you think? And I said, it's hard because Dean Smith, he played with at Brentford, and really liked Dean Smith, knew he liked him. The setup at Aston Villa was great. And then you come and you've got the same thing again. They've done a whole montage of Chris and what Bournemouth was going to offer. And you're just sitting there thinking, well, I genuinely don't know which team. And then the agent said, I think Bournemouth. And then Chris decided. And then Jim, we went afterwards to celebrate. And then Jim got his piece of paper out of his pocket and said, this is who I thought. And then the agent quite wittily said, yeah, and have you got Aston Villa written on a piece?
And did you?
No, he didn't. He literally only had Bournemouth.
Oh, amazing.
So do you spend time down there now? Like, what's your how do you manage it now? Do you get down to games quite a lot?
Yeah, I go most games.
Yeah.
In fairness, home and away when he's playing. We go down in Bournemouth's lovely part of the world, obviously.
We go down for long weekends.
Go down for long weekends.
We were only there, weren't we, last weekend?
I would have put Bournemouth in my pocket too. I love the beach.
It's just lovely down there. It's a lovely part of the world.
And he's got a lovely home,
It really is.
and he's engaged now, and they're planning a wedding, and it's nice for us to sort of have a holiday home without, and especially because all the children are all sort of living independently. And they've got a dog and we've got a dog. We just sort of, I only work part-time now, and I just say, right, we're coming down to watch the game. But Jim will literally, you every time you can, you go. We just came back from Split, the Euro qualifiers. So if we can get abroad and watch him play, we're just booking a hotel literally before this podcast for the Cardiff game in June. So it ends up being quite a nice, it's nice for us now, but Chris always knows that usually there's a member of the family there.
Number one fans. That's why we,
absolutely.
They're on the sidelines, can rain or shine.
Always.
Beautiful. And does brother and sister, do they like the sport? Do they enjoy watching football or indifferent?
Yeah, Lizzie not so much. She's not a football fan, but she'll support of Chris.
Come down as well for weekends, family get-togethers, and obviously Chris treated us all to be out in Qatar, so the children and their lovely partners were out there too, and it was a holiday, and every opportunity we can. And John, watches the games, doesn't he?
Yeah, John goes a lot. He follows them.
Mm-hmm. And sort of just to sort of start rounding off in terms of like where you are now in the parent journey. Obviously, he is very successful. He's reached the Premier League. He's doing amazingly well. What is it from a parent perspective now? How does it change in terms of support?
I think from our point of view, obviously he's not living at home, so his partner is absolutely amazing. So she's providing a lot of the emotional support that I would normally give. I'm that sort of one step removed, still doing it, but obviously I'm not seeing him straight away after every game. I think there's still the nerves when he's playing. If I can't be there, which I can't always, just a slight anxiety, a slight nervousness. But just knowing that Chris is a bit more emotionally resilient, he can put things more into perspective. It doesn't mean to say there are moments. Of course, there are moments. But I think it's what Jim said right at the beginning. I don't think any of us, Chris included, realised what a roller coaster of emotions. And you can literally be feeling very glum 1 minute, and then maybe for a game that he was playing for his club, and then he's playing internationally and he has to pick himself up and go and tackle that particular challenge. So yes, I think he's much more realistic of what football involves. He's very grateful to football for everything it's given him, his lifestyle and his future. It's given him and his fiance and any family that they have an amazing future. And he's very generous with his family as well. Too generous, but that's a nice quality to have.
Yeah, of course. Beautiful.
Well, now we're Chris's #1 fans too. Sounds amazing. And we often ask parents, if you were to advise parents starting out on this journey, sort of 3 top tips, if you like, or 3 things that you would say to parents starting out on this journey, what would those be?
I'd say always be very supportive. Try to encourage your children never to give up. Because as I said before, there's always someone out there, someone watching. But, you know, even though you get knockbacks along the way, always come back, because you never know who's watching and who will be there to spot you. And have belief in your own ability.
Lovely.
Hard sometimes.
It's a challenge, isn't it? I think it's one of the biggest challenges, that kind of mental, having that resilience and that mindset that.
And reach out, I think. We were a bit slow really on the sidelines, sort of engaging other parents in conversation, because there was a long time that we were doing the 4 days a week down to Cobham, and so was another parent. And I think if we just realised, maybe if we'd asked at the time, are any other parents living in West London, then we could have sort of done the car sharing a little bit earlier, and just having the support. And I got to know a few of the parents, and we'd be quite naughty. We'd drop the boys off at training, and, you know, we'd go and have a coffee somewhere and a little bit of a chat. But we were chatting from a female point of view, while Jim would obviously be chatting from a male.
I never went for a coffee. I was in the sun training. I won't slow me off in the cafe to have a latte. I was here in the cold, freezing, watching the training session.
Was it down the pub, Jim?
You know, one round the corner from Cobham, yeah.
I know it.
She knows it, probably.
Amazing. No, thanks, guys. Honestly, you provided so much wisdom and insight into your journey. These sorts of stories will really help parents, especially early on, well, all the way through the journey. But to hear those tips about what you can do to make a little bit, sort of the journey a little bit softer, maybe, or to put those wheels in motion to build relationships and to help with support. You know,
it's been lovely to reminisce as well. Just to sort of reflect on it and remember.
Thank you. Well, to celebrate your journey, I think it's so important, and we don't do that enough, because it's so challenging along the way that you don't get time to relax, because you're never, you know, you always know that there's more to do, and it's a long journey ahead. So we're glad this is like talking therapy.
Oh no, we've absolutely loved it. We've got so much from you guys. So thank you so much for coming on. It's very generous of you.
You're welcome. Kat, where's your boy playing?
Well, my 2 boys are in grassroots, you know, taking it, I'm not going to say seriously, but, you know, it's a different journey, but it's, you know, they're very committed and they really want to make it work. And I love supporting young people in football.
No, that's right.
I think it's fantastic for them, whatever level they play.
Yeah, whatever level.
So many amazing things. True. So, and let's see, I've got a 9-year-old, Jim. You never know. I will be telling him.
Yeah.
But especially for families, I think having that positive outlet and the discipline, the discipline that comes with football.
Working as a team.
You know, with boys, you're always a little bit worried that they might be misled, maybe go off in a direction, have, you know, dabble in things that you don't want them to dabble in. So football for us, Chris had a lot of energy, but I just feel very, very positive outlet for young boys becoming young men. I think
absolutely
because of it.
Yeah,
No, we're big support, whatever level. This is a game, and it's just so good for kids to be in it, involved in it, playing it. They learn so much. They get so much from it. It's amazing.
Yeah. And we don't often celebrate those skills. We know the on-field skills, but the dedication, the commitment, there's lots of transferable skills that they can use to go on to succeed in other areas outside of football. So that's definitely to be celebrated as well, isn't it? Okay. Guys, thank you so much.
And finally, Marcia, good luck to your young man this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
And another GCSE tomorrow while he's out there.
Oh no! Good luck for that too.
Yeah. All happy.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.